As we were announcing the titles for the different talks, someone was complaining, why are we doing a political talk about the Secretary of Education? It's not the VOSS we're talking about. The VOSS we're speaking of here is the Vatican Observatory Summer Schools. Now, Audra, you're from Chicago originally.
Yes, I am.
And where did you go to high school?
I went to high school at St. Ignatius College Prep.
Good Jesuit high school. I understand that you had an outstanding algebra teacher. Your freshman year.
Outstanding, yes.
Can he stand up?
Could he please stand up?
And from there, where did you go? What did you do in undergrad?
I did in Urbana, Illinois, so Urbana-Champaign.
Okay, and your major was?
Astronomy and physics.
And when did you come to the Vatican Observatory Summer School?
1993.
Which was a stellar year, because that was the year I was.
Which was one wonderful year, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
that was the year I arrived and did the summer school. Also, Jose Funes, who was
That's
the
right.
director before me.
Yep.
And at that point, were you still an undergrad?
Yes, I was my last year of undergrad.
Okay, from there, where did you go?
From there, I went, back to Urbana, and then to Cambridge, England, for a year for my master's.
All right, and your master, what was your master's thesis on?
Oh boy. It was on radio galaxies.
Okay, fair enough. And then from there?
From there to the University of Arizona, so there's a contingent here too.
Okay. And so naturally you got your doctorate in Arizona at astronomy, and you've been an astronomer ever since, right?
I'll tell you more about that as I give my
out
talk.
that's it.
All right. Do you know, is there a, no, this doesn't work. You don't happen to have a
Pointer?
pointer? No?
It's on the top. What is it, dim red?
Yeah, it's not working.
Well, meanwhile, you
Okay. Have I really? No, but this is just the pointer. No, I think it just went to sleep. Yeah. So as Guy Consamano said, my name is Audra Baleisis. I live here in Ann Arbor. I'm a Vatican Observatory Summer School alumna, which is part of why I'm here to talk to you today. I do have a PhD, but as I'll tell you later, it's not in astronomy, so I changed course at some point. And I will try to keep this short and a little bit interactive because in my field, we know that once you've been sitting for about 50 minutes, your attention span starts like this.
That's also the field as a mom.
That's right. Well, yeah, no, as a mom, it would have been 10 minutes and everyone would have been out of here. So the Vatican Observatory Summer School, it's not in a bad location. This was the kind of view you could see from the balcony where we would have our coffee breaks. A big difference from the cornfields of Illinois at that point. It's on the rim of a crater south of Rome in Castel Gandolfo with a beautiful lake in the middle. So getting to spend a month at a place like this was quite the opportunity. And then what is the Vatican Observatory Summer School? I didn't know how much Guy was going to talk about that, so I'll give a little bit more information. It's a month-long school, which is quite a big deal for a summer school, in some sort of astronomy topic. There have been exoplanet schools. Mine was in active galaxies. The next one, as you were saying, was stellar variability. So each school is on a specific topic, which helps you decide if you're going to apply to that school, who's going to be teaching. The instructors, as far as I know, come from Europe and the US, although you may have had...
We've got now a number who are alumna of previous schools who are in South America.
Okay. So, did I turn something off? No. So you have quite a wide variety of instructors, professors from universities. You get astronomy and astrophysics lectures. So there's a big chunk of what you do is you come and you learn more in depth from these professors. But you also do some projects, so homework-like things, where you work on these topics as well, not just sitting and listening. Students give presentations. For some of us, it was one of the first presentations we gave, so it can be a little nerve-wracking, but you're in a room of people who are friendly and are just sitting there waiting, with their best hopes for you to get through that. In my year, we got to tour the Vatican Museum. We did not do a papal visit. I don't know why. He was out of town. Anyway, But we got to tour the Vatican Museum and sort of behind the scenes kind of stuff. We also got to meet with the ambassadors to the Vatican from our respective countries. So that was interesting. I didn't even know that the US had an ambassador to the Vatican, but I got to have lunch with that person. We got to observe with local telescopes, like the one pictured here. We got cooking lessons. We made tiramisu one time. I don't remember who would have done that for us, but...
It was the woman who ran Bucci's.
Okay. There you go. And we did some local sightseeing. So the idea was not just to do astronomy, which also was nice when you're one place for a month. There's just a few pictures I've pulled out of some of my fellow students at my school going on visits around. The one on the left is Ray J. He is an astronomer. He's now a dean, I believe, in Toronto. He does exoplanet stuff, and so he's quite a great speaker, but also a pretty good runner. So there was time for fun. This is a visit we made to the Papal Gardens, also near Castel Gandolfo, I believe. It's been a while. It was 1993. So I have these pictures in my mind. They're not always, I'm not always remembering exactly where all of them were. But there was a lot of time to enjoy life in general. But then I think what makes the Vatican Observatory Summer Schools special is who goes there. And I think this is a special feature of the school compared to other schools I've attended or heard about. So first, as Guy said, it's about 25 astronomy students, but I think the rule still is no more than 2 from any country. So the idea is that you get a wide variety of students. People applying should seem to have a potential for future astronomy careers. And to their credit, I also thought I had a future astronomy career at that point. So we both thought the same thing about my application. You don't have to be Catholic. You don't have to be a believer in any religion to attend. So just because the Vatican is hosting it doesn't mean anything in that sense. There was a pretty good balance of men and women, and I'll zoom in on this photo. And in my time, again, there was a lot of financial support based on need, and I'm guessing that's still there. So now the title of my talk was Life After VOSS. So here is right during VOSS, that's me, which maybe my high school algebra teacher, I look a little bit more like I did in high school in that one, in the middle. But there are also other people. So I went after VOSS, I went back to America. Kevin Luman here, who's an astronomer at Penn State, he was the other American in my year. He went back to America as well. I went back to family, and Witold Majewski, he's at Liverpool, I think. Right now he's also still an astronomer. He was from Poland, and just by accident, the year after VOSS, he was in Chicago at Christmas time, visiting friends, but his friends had to work on Christmas Eve. And Christmas Eve is a really big holiday, especially in Eastern Europe, for Poles, Lithuanians like my family. So he wound up spending Christmas Eve with my family, with my 98-year-old godmother, who was so worried that this Polish guy was coming and that she wouldn't be able to talk to him. And I said, but he knows English and it's okay. And she spent like 15 minutes making him laugh with jokes in Polish that she probably hadn't spoken for 50, 60 years at that point. So there were some connections in all sorts of ways. I also then went on to grad school and saw a lot of people from my year in VOSS. So there are some professors, the one at the bottom, Professor Marcia Ricci, and then off to the right middle is her George Ricci, her husband. They're both professors at University of Arizona. There was Jose Funes, I wish I had a pointer. Anyway, Jose Funes is over here. He was also in my year and became the director of the Vatican Observatory for 10 years, more. There were grad students who I saw again. A lot of the Vatican Observatory astronomers are highlighted there. Just at the top is George Coyne, and just below is Guy Consolmagno. One of my first roommate in grad school, Almudena Alonso, sort of third down, she was there as well. We had visits, also Kevin Luman, who had been the astronomer, the American astronomer. We had visits from other people as well. So there's a lot of seeing people again and connections. While I was at the University of Arizona, I made a course correction. I went from a PhD in astronomy. I loved astronomy. I loved studying learning about astronomy, coursework, things like that. But I decided to switch to a PhD in science education. And the reason, partially for me, a little bit like you were saying in your talk, if you have 6 geoscientists in a room, you'll have 7 answers about how many plates you have. That part of science really didn't sit well with me. I had gone into science for like hard answers. And that uncertainty really that's not what I thought science was going to be. And it didn't really motivate me. Now, when you look at people, and there's an intrinsic uncertainty because an event had different meaning for people, that makes total sense to me. I can think about that in my sleep. That kind of uncertainty I have no problems with. And so I found that I really loved studying how science is done, what people learn about what it means to be a scientist, how people act as scientists, and then also how we teach new scientists. So that turned out to be what I really wanted to do. But I did my thesis studying how astronomy grad students, learn to speak like astronomers. So I kind of took all of my astronomy background, and as an anthropologist, you often have to spend time in the site so that you become a bit of the insider, part of the culture. Well, I had racked up those hours already. I had had many, many years in astronomy. I didn't have to do any visiting far-off lands. That was the culture I was studying. So I switched into science education, and then I had another busy 10 years. I decided to keep the astronomy research in the family by marrying an astronomer who could do astronomy and tell me about it. We got a dog. We moved to Zurich, Switzerland, where we were for about 7 years. We had 2 kids. That was a big part of being busy. And then I wound up at the end working in gender equity in astronomy for a collaboration in Switzerland called the NCCR. They do large grants for different studies, and Planet S was an exoplanet collaboration, but you also have to have an education component and a diversity component. So I was coordinating the diversity and education of young astronomers. And finally, landed in Ann Arbor last year. And this was to my great delight, I'd say, because whenever you look at teaching innovations in college or diversity and equity innovations, about a third of the time you find sources from University of Michigan. It's a great place to be. It does really well as a university of walking more of the walk and talking the talk. Many times teaching is held as important, but it doesn't then come into play when you're going up for tenure as a professor. And at Michigan, it really does come up more. So I'm really happy to be in a community where I feel like my goals are also overlapping. And this is just a statement from the university, that the University of Michigan cannot be excellent without being diverse in the broadest sense of that word. We also must ensure that our community allows all individuals an equal opportunity to thrive. So I wound up in not the central campus, which this CRLT is the Center for Research on Learning and Teaching. Their main office is downstairs. So I came in the wrong door this morning because I kind of forgot I wasn't going there. But they also have an engineering offshoot because there's a large engineering department here, college here. So I work up on the North Campus in engineering. So again, I get to use some of my math, at least when people say, well, you can do active learning with something like French or literature and discussions, and you can have people talk to each other, but you can't do it with math. And I'm like, aha, I've seen someone do it with general relativity. Gotcha. So I get to kind of use that background in science to really challenge our economists, our mathematicians, our engineers, that they can use these methods too in a way that works. So really my life after VOSS has wound up being about this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So first of all, diversity. It's just making sure that people of all backgrounds, and what's important of those backgrounds too is that they bring different skills and experiences that are important, that they're able to participate, whether it's education, where I work, or in other ways. And why diversity? Now, I don't know if anyone had a Chevy Nova, but unfortunately, it sounds like a beautiful name, right? Us sitting here in English, it's a great name. It sounds like an explosion. In Spanish, what does it mean? No va, doesn't go. And this is a huge deal if you're trying to market a new car, release it on a market like South America or Central America. So the Chevy Nova, even my mother had told me this, she grew up in Brazil, this was a big failure. You can bet that there was no one who spoke Spanish on the design team, probably, for sure not the marketing team. So by having less diversity, it cost this company a lot of money, right? Diversity matters. And when you're putting things together, if you have diverse people with diverse backgrounds, they're going to bring knowledge that helps you solve problems without having to figure out, well, what would someone in this other situation do? Then equity. And this word I had to kind of get used to when I was starting my studies. It's not the same as equality. Equity is making sure that everyone gets what they need to be successful, not that everyone gets the same thing. Does anyone here run? Come on, hands up. Be proud, because I don't, so be proud. All right. So, can I ask you what size running shoes you wear?
11 narrow.
11 narrow. All right. So I would like all of us, because I think running is good, and I'd like to get into it at some point, I'd like all of us to benefit from running. So I'm going to get an 11 narrow. What brand? Do you know? Any one of the ones you... Okay, Brooks Adrenaline. I'm going to get you all 11 narrow Brooks Adrenaline. So I'm getting equal. I'm treating you equally, right? So now you guys can all start running, right? Women's 11 narrow. It's going to work for you. Going to work for you. Going to work for you. Everyone here. So there's a little problem with giving everyone the same thing, right? That's not what people need to succeed. And except for where my kids are concerned, where you actually have to split everything exactly in half, even if one is this tall and one is this tall. It shouldn't matter that the person getting the size 13 shoe has more fabric in their shoe, and the person getting the size 8 shoe has less fabric. That's not the point. The point is that they're each getting what they need to participate. Inclusion is making sure people feel valued, welcomed, and respected, and that they're held to a high standard, but with a clear path to achieve it. And this is still something that can be lacking in many places, academia specifically. You want the standards to be high, but it shouldn't be a secret how you get there. You don't want people to get a PhD in spite of the education. You want them to get it because of. And why inclusion? It's been shown in many research studies that all students, not just students maybe who are coming from a disadvantaged background, first generation in college, something else, but all students in those classes learn better if the environments are inclusive. And that can be as simple as knowing people's names, as making sure people aren't just allowed to come in, but feel like they're part of the community. So there's a difference between letting everyone in and making them feel like they also should be there and belong. So this is where I circle back to the VOSS, because part of what now, looking back at this, I think I liked so much, we looked at this before about who the students were. There were no more than 2 from a country. There was a potential for future astronomy careers, wasn't dependent on religious belief. You try to balance the numbers of women and men. The financial support was based on need. That meant if someone came from an Eastern European country to Italy that summer, they weren't coming with a lot of money. They couldn't buy much in Italian lira at the point, as much as I could. And so George Coyne, who was the director at that point, he made sure they had spending money too, so that they could enjoy their time there in the same way that I could, or someone from England, or someone who came from a stronger economy, right? It was based on need. We weren't all given the same thing. So here's my last piece, and a little nod to what I do now. I'd like you to take 1 minute to think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and which one of these you think overlaps with any one of those on the left, those ideals or those characteristics of the Vatican Summer School. And I am going to give you a minute. And then I'd like you to talk to someone next to you and say what you thought, just to share your idea about that for 1 minute. So I expect it to get loud now. All right, so although it's a beautiful sound to hear you all talking, and in a class, that's for me one of the best things. A minute goes very fast when you're doing the talking and not me, right? Anyone want to give some volunteer an answer? Okay, yeah. All of them. Okay, give me an example of one that you, just how you saw it.
We discussed inclusion, which the financial support, making sure that those that were not economically as well off as others were included and had the same experiences as those that could.
Okay. Another one more. Yeah.
One thing, they all are elements of this, but if you don't have a culture that promotes accretion or crashing or encounter, you just have silos of these different experiences. So I think they're all critical, depending whether you're private or public. You can handle those factors in different ways. But you really, you need people who want to reach across and meet new people.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess my take-home message for today, what I wanted to come say was just that I think what VOSS is good at and has been good at is by having this structure. It really promotes excellence in future astronomy training and teaching for young astronomers by including these research-based ideals that really align also with social justice ideals. So I think it's a great program for that because it has some of these features that really do encourage people from many different places to come together, get to know each other, and experience what diversity can give you. Thank you.
Thank you.